Every 4 years, half the planet stops to watch 22 people chase a ball. No war has paused for it. No border has stopped it. No language has failed to describe the feeling when it goes in. But before the stadiums, before the sponsorships, the trophies, the billions of dollars and billions of fans, there was just a ball. And an idea as old as civilization itself. Kick it. Don't touch it. Get it past the other side. This is the story of how that simple idea became the most popular game on Earth. The beautiful game. Humans have been kicking things for fun for at least 3,000 years. In China, during the Han Dynasty, soldiers played a game called Cuju, kickball. Players dribbled a leather ball stuffed with feathers and hair through a small hole in a silk net without using their hands. Some historians consider it the earliest recorded form of football, and FIFA itself has recognized Cuju as the game's most distant ancestor. Across the world, entirely unconnected, other cultures invented their own versions. The Aztecs and Maya played a ritual ball game using a solid rubber ball, a game so significant that losers were sometimes sacrificed to the gods. In ancient Greece, there was a piskouros. In Rome, harpastum, a rougher, more violent contest played on a rectangular field. By the Middle Ages, in England and France, entire villages would face off against each other in what was less a sport than organized chaos. Mob football. Hundreds of players. No real rules. The ball, sometimes an inflated pig's bladder, had to reach a marker at the opposite end of town, by any means necessary. Broken bones were common. So were riots. It was so disruptive that English kings tried to ban it outright. In 1314, King Edward II issued a royal decree prohibiting football in London, citing the, quote, great noise in the city caused by hustling over large balls. It didn't work. The game was already too loved to kill. The turning point came not on a village green, but in the private schools of Victorian England. By the early 1800s, elite schools like Eton, Harrow, and Rugby had each developed their own version of football, and each school played by different rules. Some allowed handling the ball, some allowed hacking, kicking an opponent's shins. Some didn't allow a ball to be carried at all. When these students went on to university, chaos followed. Nobody could agree on how to actually play a match. So, on the evening of October 26, 1863, representatives from 11 London clubs and schools met at the Freemasons' Tavern in central London. Over the course of 6 meetings, they hammered out a single unified code. They called their new organization the Football Association. The most contentious issue was simple. Should players be allowed to carry the ball with their hands? The clubs that wanted handling and hacking eventually walked away from the discussions entirely. They would go on to form their own sport with its own body a few years later, rugby football. The clubs that stayed agreed on something radical for the time. The game would be played with the feet. Hands were out, except for the goalkeeper. This was the first time in history that football, as we now understand it, had a single written rule book. It's a strange thing to consider that soccer and rugby, two of the world's most popular sports, were born in the same room, on the same night and split apart over a disagreement about hands. At first, football belonged to the upper classes, university men, and old boys clubs playing for the love of amateur competition. But the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Factory owners in England's north began forming teams for their workers, partly for fitness, partly for morale, partly to keep men out of the pubs on a Saturday. Clubs sprang up with names that still exist today. Manchester United began as Newton Heath, a team of railway workers. Arsenal started as a munitions factory team in Woolwich. West Ham were the shipbuilders of Thames Ironworks. By 1888, the sport had become so popular and so competitive that a new question emerged. Should players be paid? The Football Association had insisted the game remain strictly amateur, but northern clubs were already quietly paying their best players to keep them from being poached. When the practice was finally legalized, the Football League was founded, the world's first organized professional football competition. The game had officially become a job, and for millions of working-class fans, it had become something more than that. A Saturday ritual, a source of identity, an escape from the factory floor. Football didn't stay British for long. British sailors, merchants, and railway engineers carried the game with them across the globe. To the ports of South America, the cities of continental Europe, and beyond. In 1867, British expatriates founded one of the first football clubs outside the UK in Argentina. By the 1890s, clubs were forming in Italy, Spain, Germany, and Brazil, often started by British workers and local elites who had studied in England. But something remarkable happened once the game left English soil. It stopped being English. In Argentina and Uruguay, players developed a quicker, more improvisational style built around close control and flair, a direct ancestor of what would later be called the beautiful game. In Brazil, football fused with rhythm, dance, and street culture, producing a style of play that prioritized creativity over rigid formation. The sport that Britain exported as a disciplined, structured pastime came back transformed. Faster, looser, and in many places, more artistic than its birthplace had ever imagined. In 1904-07, European nations met in Paris to found an international governing body to oversee this rapidly globalizing sport, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, FIFA. The stage was being set for football to become a truly global obsession. For decades, the closest thing to a world championship was the Olympic football tournament. But in 1930, FIFA decided the game deserved its own stage. 13 nations traveled, many by ship, across the Atlantic, to Uruguay, the reigning Olympic champion, for the first ever FIFA World Cup. Uruguay won on home soil, and a tradition was born that would eventually become the most watched sporting event on the planet. The tournament survived a hiatus during the Second World War, then returned to a world hungry for something to unite around. Television changed everything. The 1954 World Cup was the first broadcast internationally. By 1970, in Mexico, the tournament was broadcast in color for the first time. the world watching a 17-year-old turned legend named Pelé lead Brazil to a third title, a moment many still consider the high point of football as art. From there, the World Cup became a kind of global clock, ticking every 4 years, producing legends, heartbreaks, and moments that transcended sport entirely. Diego Maradona's Hand of God, and his sublime solo goal in the very same match in 1986. Zinedine Zidane's stunning final act in 2006. And in 2022, Lionel Messi finally lifting the one trophy that had eluded him his entire career. Football had become more than a game. It had become a shared global language. Today, football is no longer just a sport. It's an industry. Television rights, global sponsorships, and international broadcasting have turned club football into a business worth tens of billions of dollars a year. The English Premier League alone is broadcast in over 190 countries. The women's game, long overlooked and underfunded, has surged in the past 2 decades. The Women's World Cup, first held in 1991, has grown from a modest event into a global spectacle in its own right, drawing record-breaking crowds and forcing a long-overdue reckoning with equal pay and investment across the sport. Technology has reshaped the game too. Goal line sensors settle disputes in an instant. Video assistant referees review controversial decisions in real time. Data analytics now influence everything from a player's positioning to which direction a goalkeeper dives to save a penalty. And yet, for all the money and all the machinery around the modern game, its purest form has never changed. On a dirt lot in Lagos, on a rooftop in Rio, in a fenced concrete pitch in London, kids still play with nothing but a ball, 2 makeshift goals, and an argument about whether that shot went in. From a feather-stuffed ball in ancient China, to a tavern argument in London, to a packed stadium of 80,000 voices singing as one, football has always belonged, in the end, to whoever is willing to kick the ball. It has been banned by kings, adopted by factories, exported by sailors, transformed by the streets of South America, broadcast to billions, and never once stopped being, at its core, remarkably simple. 2 goals, 1 ball, anyone can play. That may be the real reason it became the most popular game on earth. Not because it was invented by any one nation, or perfected by any one team, but because it never belonged to anyone. It belongs to everyone.